quite a big issue that was about Europe and these corporations by Britain in particular, not holding them to account, the Googles of this world.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Look, it's a fair point. I mean, the reason, people look and they go, okay, there's 10, I don't know, I think there was 3 dozen chief executives from FTSE 100 companies, right, want to stay in the EU, and we shall stay in the EU, and if we don't, the sky will fall in. And it's all rubbish, basically. The simple fact of it is that the reason that BP want to stay in the EU is because when they want the rules changed, they can send an army of lobbyists out to Brussels, and they can have the rules changed, not just in Britain, they can have them changed right across Europe for their advantage and to the disadvantage of their smaller competitor who cannot afford to employ the lobbyists to do the same job. I mean, this is what's going on. People like PriceCoopers Waterhouse have an office in every European capital that deals solely with facilitating local businesses in taking money from the EU, basically. That's what it does. It shows them where you can claim this money from the EU, and we'll show you how to do it. And they've got an office in every European capital. That's why they're in favour of it. Of course they're in favour of it. It's a corporatist racket. And TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, will be the culmination of the EU being a corporatist racket. If you're going to vote on the EU, vote for no other reason, right? Vote to end what is a corporatist racket. It's not in the people's interest. It's only in the interests of big corporations. That's what the EU has become.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's how it started out, but that's what it's become.
All right. Thanks for that, Tony. Lee?
Concede the point on Margaret Thatcher. It's a Tory government that took them to sign away those rights, which is the general point.
Sorry. Yeah, Tony.
With a dramatic example.
Okay.
With a dramatic example. So accede on that point. Say that the European Union is nothing to do with trade. Well, the extent to which British businesses, the British economy is integrated into the European Union speaks for itself. I mean, the figures are there. And so we're not talking about, some sort of mild effect if we were to withdraw from the European Union. We're talking about a whole host of unintended consequences, some of which can't even be foreseen. I don't believe in the doomsday scenario that some would like to paint about, the sky falling in if we were to leave. But I do think it's a sensible and reasonable proposition to make a case around whether we would be economically better off as a consequence. And I don't think the case has been made at all. I think, we can all say, well, anybody who's discriminatory is a moron, but I'm afraid the experience of black and ethnic minority people in the United Kingdom is facing, levels of structural and institutional racism that are well documented and which everybody accepts. And the reality is that those of us will want to see strong anti-discriminatory legislation, and that will not occur if we leave the European Union, because I don't believe that Nigel Farage or people who will emerge as the country's leaders in the aftermath of such a decision would even dream of relaxing visa controls on black and ethnic minority people. In fact, visa controls can be relaxed now. There's nothing to do with the European Union. They can relax them.
No, he's absolutely right. That's the point I made. That's true. They could do it, but because
hold on a minute, Tony, because I can't hear both
people coming from Europe. We can't let everybody in. Something has to give. That's basically what's going on.
Okay, I can't hear both of you when you're talking together.
There's a great English tradition, and it's called debate, and it's I speak and you listen, then you speak and I listen, and I don't interrupt you, you don't interrupt me. It's a great British tradition which we all cherish. If we could maintain it for this discussion, I'd be greatly appreciative. But moving on to some of the other issues, the notion that parties like the Tories and UKIP are going to vote for relaxed immigration controls on black and ethnic minority former Commonwealth countries is absolutely ludicrous. And the idea, the brass-necked nature of Nigel Farage making that argument takes politics into the realm of the totally bizarre. It's not a credible claim. Nobody believes it, and it will not gain traction in communities. And I think that the other points were around the labour market, which I made earlier. The fact is that our birth rate is declining. There is already a shortfall between the birth rate in this country and the labour market vacancies that we have. So we just don't have enough children being born. The only growth sectors within British populations are within the Asian and African communities. They've got the youngest profile population and have the greatest number of families. Everybody else, including them from former Caribbean countries, are suffering a massive decline in their birth rate. And so there's a huge gap between where we need to be in terms of supplying workers for a growing economy, maintaining a tax revenue base that is capable of investing and supporting pensions and national health service and everything else. And, the other point about migrants in relation to the whole debate is the extent to which migrants contribute to our community. My family, migrant families, lots of people listening to this program, families, will be migrant families. They will know how hard they've come, how hard they work, and what they've contributed to Great Britain. And we mustn't get confused when this out campaign suggests to us that one of the benefits of leaving the European Union would be a relaxation on visa controls for our countries, because that is as a likely scenario as a man landing on Mars in the next couple of days. It's just not going to happen.
Now, that was mentioned by George Osborne as well, Tony, with regard to the visa situation. And it is something that's resonating with the man on the street, because there's so much of the referendum, and we said it earlier about how confusing it is, that because when we talk about these corporate businesses and tax and VAT and things like that, it is having the effect on the ground, but how it's having the effect, the man on the street is not really totally aware of.
Yeah, well, going back to visa controls, I disagree. Initially, if we leave the EU, the idea that suddenly we'll be able to shut drawbridges. They like to talk about drawbridges. If it's not that, it's fax machines. But drawbridges, will be pulled up. It's not going to happen. And the simple reason is because when Britain leaves the EU, regardless of what Nigel Farage might say or anybody else might say, the simple truth of it is that we need to maintain access to the single market. All right? Not everybody, this is the thing, not everybody who trades with the single market is in the EU. You don't have to be. Norway trades with the single market. All right? It's got a very good relationship with the single market. It's not perfect. But we are where we are. We should never have been in this position because we should never have joined it. But we are where we are. All right? So to adopt the Norway position, all right, Norway can control its immigration to a point. It has a handbrake, which David Cameron had allegedly negotiated, but now seems to have forgotten about. Norway has a handbrake that Norway can operate, all right? And it can stop immigration and one thing or another, but you can't do it full time. If we're going to have access to the single market, we're going to have to continue with free movement of people, because it's a fundamental tenet of the single market. So nobody's going to give us that access without it. I mean, so it'll take some time before that can happen. Extracting us from the EU is something that will take. It's such a complex operation that it'll take probably a decade to actually
come out
from the EU. That's the thing people need to understand. It's not going to. This is not. Withdrawal from the EU is not an event that will happen on the 24th of June. It won't happen. There's probably people listening who think they can vote Brexit. We'll issue Article 50 notice on Friday, and then we'll leave on Monday week. Not going to happen, take 2 years to negotiate.